the market's just waiting, like everyone else, for what these tariffs will look like and who they will impact. But it's coming as I know you speak to Wall Street CEOs and analysts really concerned about what this means for growth forecasts going forward. A lot of uncertainty. And these CEOs are also speaking with White House aides, including the president. Talk about the impact that this will all have on business and Wall Street.
Well, Bianna, I mean, this does look like the biggest moment yet in a trade war that has already caused so much chaos, so much confusion on Wall Street, but also across corporate America and really business leaders around the world. I do want to touch on something that Elena just brought up, which is that the president used tariffs aggressively during his first term. And yet, as the White House has argued, inflation was not a major problem. And those things are true, except that tariffs are being used even more aggressively this time around. A much broader swath of U.S. exports are being hit and targeted by tariffs. And of course, inflation is higher. People are more sensitive to inflation. Interest rates are higher. So it's really not an apples to apples comparison. Now, about today's so-called Liberation Day announcement, the White House has said that these tariffs will be effective immediately. That's something that has alarmed some economists and some investors because it's not really clear how you could even make it effective immediately, and it would mean businesses have almost no time to adjust. There's a range of proposals under consideration, including perhaps more limited tariffs on some countries, and then this more extreme option of potentially an up to 20% universal tariff. Investors and economists have said to me that that is really the worst case scenario. That is the most extreme item on this tariff menu. And just to give you some context there, the Budget Lab at Yale said that, look, if there's this 20% broad tariff, on top of the already existing tariffs that Trump has put into place, well, you'd be looking at a U.S. tariff rate at almost 33%. That would be the highest since 1872, when the President of the United States was Ulysses S. Grant. And the Budget Lab warned that, look, you're going to see price increases in many different areas that consumers would feel, including on clothes, food, electronics. And they say that these price increases would really eat into Americans' disposable income, that the typical middle-class family would lose about $3,800 in disposable income. Now, as Elena mentioned, there's been a number of different rationales that have been floated by the administration about the use of tariffs, right? Everything from trying to stop fentanyl and illegal immigration to raising revenue, trying to level the trading playing field, and also trying to restore and bring back manufacturing jobs. Of course, some of those strategies and goals are sort of in conflict, right? I mean, if you're trying to use tariffs to get Mexico to do a better job at the border, well, that suggests the tariffs are not there for long-term purposes. But if you're trying to raise revenue, they'd have to be there for long-term. Take a listen to University of Michigan economist Betsy Stevenson weighing in on these shifting rationales and the wisdom of using tariffs like this.
At the end of the day, the tariffs don't really make sense. Making it so that things are more expensive for American consumers. And then, what will happen in all likelihood is it'll be harder for American exporters to export because of retaliatory tariffs. What we're looking at is a shrinking economy and higher prices.
Now, the bottom line here, of course, is that the cost of living remains such a major frustration for a lot of Americans. It's one of the issues that got President Trump elected in November. And economists are saying that not only will his tariffs fail to solve the cost of living problem, they warn it could make the cost of living even worse.
Now, if you're confused about the coming tariffs, what it means for you, I'm with you. Luckily, we have somebody who can explain, or at least begin to explain, what it could mean for you, bring a little clarity into your life. And that, of course, is our own Phil Mattingly. Thank you so much for being here to break it all down. The first question is the what. We all know by now that the expectation is that these tariffs go into effect and prices go up.
Right.
What do we expect the prices to go up on first?
Yeah, look, it's got to be the most important question in everybody's minds right now. Maybe other than what is a tariff, which, by the way, it is a tax on imported goods. And by the way, it's paid by the importer, which is an American company, just kind of throwing that part out there. But to the prices themselves, look, it's almost impossible. It is impossible to tell people what is going to happen at 4 p.m. today because we don't know. Last night, the Trump administration still going through it at the highest levels. But what we do know is there have been significant tariffs already put into place. 25% on some countries, 25% on steel, kind of across the board tariffs that we hadn't seen before at a scale that's much bigger than the first term. And we know from those tariffs, things like food, crude oil, cars and autos, computers, electronics, clothing, are all targeted or will get hit by that. We'll see how the market kind of plays out going forward. A lot of reticence to make any moves as we wait for more tariffs to come in. And I think that's the critical point here, because when you look at the tariffs that have already been put into place, you're talking, of course, about 25% on Mexico, 25% on Canada, 20% on China. Then you have steel and aluminum tariffs. That hits the EU. You also have automotive tariffs, parts tariffs as well that are coming into play today. It's been fascinating to watch India, which has major agriculture barriers. They've been targeted. They've been trying to get out of it. What happens there? So we have a sense of the scale right now, which is bigger than we've ever seen before. And yet today is going to be so much bigger.
Okay, so explain the different kinds of tariffs that could impact Americans.
Yeah, look, if you're an economist who loves modeling tariffs, like God bless you, but also this is your heaven and this is your moment, because all we're operating in right now is the theoretical. What Donald Trump has proposed is reciprocal tariffs. He says this is an issue of fairness. There are countries with barriers that are significantly higher than the US, particularly when you include non-tariff barriers. We're just trying to equalize right now. That's really hard to do, going country by country, product by product. How do you define non-tariff barriers? However, the Yale Budget Lab has been doing some great work trying to figure this out. They put the cost to the American price increases at $2,700 to $3,400 for their version of the reciprocal tariffs plan. Now, what about a universal tariff? Every country kind of hits a minimum of payment. 20% was a topic that had gotten back on the table after being off for several months, $3,400 to $4,200. So the scale could be enormous if it's as big as proposed right now.
So these numbers are, he says, the cost of tariffs to consumers.
Right.
This is for each consumer?
For a middle-class family, yes.
I see.
Yes, if they're put into place. That's the scale right now, right? It is enormous based on how they've talked about it. The details are absolutely critical. But again, you talk about details here, and I think this is important. Think about automobiles, right? Automobiles and the parts. The Trump administration has already signed off on 25% tariffs on all autos. They have also signed off on 25% tariffs on all auto parts. Trump has said, look, you don't want to take the tariffs? Make your cars in the United States. This is where it gets complicated. Say the car we're talking about hypothetically is $48,000. It is a U.S. origin car. Well, the average car has about 30,000 parts, Dana. About 40% of those parts, even for U.S. made cars, come from elsewhere. So if you're trying to buy that car, well, something's coming from Mexico. Something's coming in from Canada. Perhaps something's coming in from Europe as well. The projections, according to some of the industry analysts, between $4,000 and $12,000, all of a sudden that $48,000 car becomes a $60,000 car.
Wow. That is so important for people to understand. We're already in a global economy.
Right.
We have been for decades and decades. And so if you want to put tariffs on other countries, you have to do it not just for the overall product, but all of the parts, particularly when you're coming.
Yeah, and it was interesting. When President Trump was asked about prices going up on automobiles, he said, I couldn't care less if they're not made in the United States. And this is where it kind of comes underneath that. However, I do think it's important to point out the Trump administration, when I talk to officials that are working on this, they make clear they don't believe these projections are right. That's obviously the case, so they wouldn't be moving forward with them. They also believe that it's not taking into account the fact they're going to have massive incentives to be able to bring companies back into the United States. And they believe the U.S. consumer, which is a $3 trillion import market, will force companies to eat some of the tariffs themselves. We'll see how it plays out.